Happy New Year and welcome to another episode of Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard, the first episode of 2025. Hope you had a great Christmas, a great holidays, and a great New Year's with your family and friends. We are back here with Benny Fowler, Super Bowl 50 champion, former NFL wide receiver, to break down what's been going on late in this NFL season as the playoff standings begin to be set. There's more to play for in Week 18. There's Black Monday upcoming. We'll preview what coaches we feel like who are on the hot seat will end up getting those pink slips and getting fired. Where will there be full-scale turnover? There's always more change than people expect nowadays as these owners, it's nothing to them to make a firing, to turn over, and to change up the regime and the process when it's not working because financially, most of them can handle it. So we're going to get into all of that. Just want to tell you first about my bookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. My bookie is rolling out the red carpet this football season. We've been making you money at my bookie. If you signed up already, you know this. But if you haven't already, it's not too late. Click on the link in my social media profiles everywhere. Use the promo code PATSPICKS, and you will get a 50% match on your first deposit all the way up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. You look at my Pat's picks. You look at my picks across the board. I believe I was 11-5 in week 17, 2-1 in Pat's picks. And we're usually hitting every week on at least one of our Giants sprinkle props with the Giants or one of their opponents. So stay tuned for those picks coming prior to the Giants season finale in Philadelphia, despite the Eagles resting some starters. But my bookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Again, Pat's picks is that promo code. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally feel a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Use the QR code on your screen or the code TalkingBall25, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Again, start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee concentrate that's great for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. It's great for making an espresso martini. It also takes about 10 seconds to make a delicious hot or cold Estate 98 coffee. And each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkingball and get an exclusive offer right now, 80% off your first order. That's Estate 98 Coffee. And now, on to our first interview of 2025 with the one and only Benny Fowler. All right, welcome back to Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. Happy 2025. We are here, of course, with Super Bowl 50 champion, former NFL wide receiver, Benny Fowler. Beans, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year, man. I'm good. Relaxing, finishing up or starting a new year, middle of the week. Actually, towards the end of the week, I guess it's Thursday, right? So
yeah,
things are good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really geared up for the playoffs, for the coaching cycle, which is always fascinating, which we'll get into a little bit today. There's always some jobs that come open that people either have no idea or are about to, or have decided, this guy's probably going to get another year. So the Black Monday, that cycle is always, I don't know if exciting is the right word for it, but it's definitely sudden, unexpected, and interesting and entertaining. And then you're really excited. I'm not going to make the announcement yet for us here, but I'm excited about, some announcements coming down the pike about our podcast, about what you and I are going to be doing this year. And I'm just thrilled to keep this going and take it to the next level. And I'm grateful that you're here for it. And speaking of next level, Benny, I know it's a few days removed now, but I wanted to start this out by, I don't know if it's talking about or just honoring Saquon Barkley for reaching 2,000 yards rushing. He is only the 9th running back all time to do it. And Benny, from a player's perspective, could you just explain to me and to our listeners and viewers how special of an accomplishment this is for number 26?
I think it's an incredible accomplishment for him. I mean, yeah, being one of only 9 players to ever do and achieve something like this. Yeah, I think we talked about it, week 1 or before the season even started, that we would see Saquon do some incredible things because of the offensive line that he was now playing with. Kellen Moore calling the plays and just having a stable locker room, and a locker room that is more veteran presence, has a ton of talent around it. We were going to see some incredible numbers from him. So this is an incredible honor. I mean, he's always had the ability, but you've had some health things, and then you've had a team and an organization that isn't as good and doesn't put and surround him with the right talent and players for him to showcase his ability. But now you have a real chance to see it, and it's incredible. I mean, all of the plays. I mean, you think about all of the home runs that he hit this year in terms of 65-yard touchdowns, 70-yard touchdowns, 40-yard touchdowns, not to mentioning jumping over somebody backwards. We saw it all from Saquon this year. So what an incredible season.
Amazing from Saquon. Of course, resting along with several key Eagle starters in week 18 in their finale against the Giants. Benny, just zeroing in on the Eagles' decision here. Do you think that's the right call by Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman and the Eagles staff and leadership? Or do you feel like let him get it? It's earning that honor and breaking Eric Dickerson's record, because Saquon is only 101 yards away. Would getting that kind of elevate the team that much more? Which side do you fall on there?
I fall more on the player side. I definitely think that you let Saquon go for the record, and it's also you let the offensive line go for the record. I mean, what an incredible honor this would be for him to break a record that's been held by one person for the last 40 years. And I think the teams that I played on and the players that I played with, they went for those types of records. I mean, I got to the Broncos the year after Peyton just set the all-time passing TDs record, passing yards record. I think that offense, they broke every record the year before I got to Denver, and they went for that stuff. So Peyton, when he went for 51 touchdowns, they threw a go route. They didn't have to. I think they were blowing the Texans out, but they threw a go route to Julius Thomas to break the record. I mean, they were trying to shatter everything. So I would go for it. I would have gone for it. Patriots, they went for the 17-0 record. They didn't need to go for it. I just think you go for those types of things. And I think Saquon, all the work that he put in this offseason, the offensive line, go for it. I just, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I think also because I think he had over 100 yards rushing in the first half against the Giants the last time they played, and he's gone over the 101-yard mark that he needs to get the record in something crazy like 12 of his 16 games or something like that. So I feel like you could have gone for it and pulled guys out of the game probably before half, frankly. Like I don't think it would have been a full day's work. But Eagles obviously with something bigger in mind, and Saquon, of course, not fighting it, prioritizing the team as he is known to do. Benny, on the subject of resting guys in general now, teams like the Chiefs, obviously, with anybody who has clinched their seed and where they're at, where do you fall on the need to keep playing football to stay ready for the playoff games versus keeping your body fresh and getting an injury healed up for the postseason? Because I know there's examples of both working out, but I feel like it's dangerous let's look at the Chiefs. They're actually playing their best ball and ascending right now. And now they're going to go into their first playoff game with almost 3 straight weeks off of playing football games. So I'm a little bit skeptical of resting guys. Even like the Rams look like they're not going to play a lot of guys this week, even though they're playing technically still to protect their seeding. I believe that it's the difference between the 3 and the 5. How do you feel about that? Should teams like that keep guys on the field and let them keep playing, or is it smart to rest?
I think it really depends on the situation. I think it also depends on the coach. I think if you're a Sean McVay or an Andy Reid and you want to rest your players, it's totally fine because of the way they scheme things up, the way they game plan. And Andy Reid coming off bye weeks is done very well. Also, when you're looking at the Chiefs and you're looking at them resting, they need the rest because they've gone to the Super Bowl the last 2 years. So they are a tired team. They have tired legs. Resting them is totally different because of how long their seasons have been. Sean McVay, the Rams have had long seasons as well. Quarterback's a little bit older in age, but the players that need to stay in and keep the rhythm are your younger guys, the people the people who haven't played as much ball. But I think it really just depends. I am skeptical, though, always because of the experience that I had personally in the teams that I played on, at least my first 2 years, where we had a bye week the first 2 years I played in the NFL as the number one seed, and we came out rusty. We lost the first one my rookie year at home to Indianapolis. And then my second year, we ended up beating Pittsburgh, but we did not play well in that first half. So it took us a while to get our rhythm going. So I am skeptical of it, but if you have a veteran team that needs the rest, you definitely do it. But also, I know how Andy Reid practices, so they're going to get those reps, and their starters will get those.
That's
60
true.
plays, 75 plays. They will get all of that stuff.
That's a good point, how it's different team to team. And your point about the Chiefs there, I think, is a great one, is that they practice as hard, if not harder, than anybody in the league. So that's a good point. When your first 2 years, when you guys had the 1 seed and came out rusty, do you feel when you were on the field, part of that, does it feel like complacency in those instances for a number 1 seed that hasn't played in a couple of weeks? Or is it just like, does the intensity kind of ratchet down just because you're not used to it and in it, and the stakes feel different? Or what does it feel like?
The speed of the playoff games are just a lot faster. And if you take a couple weeks off, the speed, the intensity is just it's another level up, which is kind of crazy to say because every week in the NFL is nuts in terms of the speed and how things are done. But when you go to the playoffs and it's one and done, the speed is just that much faster. And you have different people on kickoff, kick return. I mean, you're putting your best foot forward on all and at every position. So, your starters aren't coming out as much. It isn't everything is designed. All the plays are designed around all your best players. So that's what's different.
Interesting. Well, some big matchups coming in week 18. There are teams with something to play for. Saturday, of course, I don't think any question that Baltimore is going to take care of Cleveland, given how Cleveland's offense looks, and Baltimore will end up still in that division. But the night game, Benny, Cincinnati still fighting for a playoff spot. They obviously need help from the Broncos and the Dolphins. But how do you feel like this shakes out? Bengals at the Steelers with a potential playoff berth on the line for the Bengals here. The Steelers beat them last time in a high-flying shootout, 44-38 on December 1st. You feel like Cincinnati gets this done, or do they ultimately fall short as the team they kind of have been throughout the season?
I think they get it done. I mean, Joe Burrow might be playing the best football in the league right now. I mean, he is playing insane. And then he has 2 weapons that cannot be stopped. So it's hard you can't double chase because you got T. Higgins on the other side. So I would go with the Bengals winning this one just based off of the way that they have been playing. I mean, they've been playing incredible on offense. I mean, their defense is still suspect, but at the end of the day, the way Joe Burrow is playing and spreading the ball around to literally everybody, and then also running the ball, keeping some plays alive, keeping some drives alive, is super exciting to watch and super impressive to watch. So I got the Bengals going to get the dub.
All right. So if the Bengals get the dub, then that makes Sunday even more interesting. We have Broncos against the Chiefs. Broncos right now sit in that 7 seed, so they can win, and they're in. The Dolphins at the Jets are the first team out, just ahead of the Bengals. So if the Dolphins were to win and the Bengals were to win, the Dolphins would still stay ahead of them. Let's start with the Broncos in your town in Denver. My first question, Benny, is if the Broncos somehow don't get in here, right? Will the season be considered a disappointment, or will people still, I think I fall in this category, will people still be able to look at this in Denver and say, we got our quarterback. Look at how much better this team is now with Sean Payton and the roster with a couple pieces added, the arrows pointing up. Which one will people come out of this feeling if the Broncos somehow don't get this done?
if they don't get it done, people will be excited the fact that we do have a quarterback now. We can now go into an offseason where we don't have to look at who is the quarterback going to be for the Broncos. But it will be disappointing because we've had so many opportunities just to clinch the playoff berth. And we had an opportunity last week in Cincinnati to get that done. The Chargers game, they were winning handily early on, and you didn't get that done. So Broncos fans for sure will be disappointed because it's been so long since we have been to the playoffs, but at the same time, super excited about Bo, Sean being here, and now going into an offseason where we can actually spend a little bit more money and attract some free agents. But at the end of the day, we got to get this one done at home. Kansas City's resting their starters. They lost. Broncos lost to Kansas City, I don't know, by 1 or 2 or whatever it was early
Tight
on
game.
in the season.
Yep.
So
16-14.
Exactly. So now you got to go out here, get it done Sunday to start and kick off the year 2025. So,
yeah. So how do you feel like it shakes out? My feeling is, I mean, you remember Bo Nix played a really clean game that day, right? There's a part of me that says the Chiefs are resting guys. Carson Wentz is going to turn the ball over. The Broncos defense has been really good at not only turning the ball over, but turning it into points. So part of me says, well, Denver's got a good team. They'll get it done. Steve Spagnuolo facing a rookie for the second time in a season scares me a little bit, but without his horses, I guess there's a chance that it's just a little bit too difficult for the Chiefs to do it. But how do you feel about this?
Sean's also facing him for the second time. So
true.
Totally different. I think the Broncos had some opportunities early on in that other Kansas City game that they missed. So we'll see. Sean's got, he'll scheme up some good things. And I think it's totally different now. Denver's receivers are playing a lot better. And they are spreading the ball around. Marvin Mims playing well. Cortland Sutton is coming into his own. So I think this Broncos team is a totally different team too.
Benny, what a throw and catch that was, by the way, Nix to Mims.
Crazy. Incredible play by Mims.
Not a lot of you're somebody who always points this out to me. Like hands catches don't happen like that as much as they should, right? Or as much as you would think. That is a 100% hands catch, contested.
100%. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. 2 with 2 people on him.
Yeah, no, fantastic play. Bo Nix, super impressive. And I think the Broncos ultimately get it done. So that'll be exciting for them to get in. The NFC, Benny, the Buccaneers are playing against the Saints to protect their division title against the Falcons, who are also playing against the Panthers. I think even though the Bucs have laid some eggs, I think New Orleans is terrible. So I don't really have many questions about the Bucs not only getting that done, but rolling. The game, obviously, that everyone's going to be watching is Lions-Vikings. And this is so critical. I heard a crazy stat. I believe it was from Sirius XM. Rich Gannon had a stat, essentially that 40 some teams that got the 1 seed have made it to the Super Bowl, and only 3 who had the 5 seed have gotten to a Super Bowl. And so that's the difference between winning or losing this game for both the Lions and the Vikings. Detroit beat Minnesota at Minnesota on October 20th, 31-29. But the Lions now have a ton of injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. How do you feel like this game shakes out? Preview this for us because, man, this is, Coach of the Year Kevin O'Connell against a Detroit team that just put 40 on a Niners team in a game that the Lions didn't even need.
Yeah, well, number one, I will say the Lions offense is incredible. Ben Johnson and the way that he calls these plays, the way that he just thinks about getting his playmakers the ball. I don't think this is one of the only offenses that I've seen where there's never a bad down and distance. 3rd and 17, they call a hook and ladder to get a first down, or they just dump it off to the running back. So I don't think there is a bad down and distance for Ben Johnson, just based off of what I've seen this season. And I can't say that about all the offenses that I've ever watched play, but
wow,
no matter what the down and distance is, he has something to get them a first down. or a touchdown. So I would say that's incredible. I think when it comes to this game, Detroit versus Minnesota, Minnesota runs a similar offense that San Francisco does. A lot of the zone cutting, zone runs, but you have Aaron Jones now at running back. Sam Darnold's playing lights out, incredible weapons all across the board for Minnesota. So I think that they will be able to move the ball against Detroit the same way San Francisco did. Now, Brock threw 2 bad passes, 2 bad interceptions, but they were moving the ball very consistent against Detroit. And I think that's something that Detroit needs to worry about, or that they will be worried about. But I can see Minnesota going in there and winning this game just based off of the fact that they can control the line of scrimmage. And that, like I said, they're running a similar offense that San Fran just ran, and San Francisco was moving the ball at will. Pearsall was having a day. Deebo Samuel was doing his thing. They were running the ball really well. Catching the running back for San Francisco was catching the ball out of the backfield. And so when you think about Aaron Jones, you think about Jalen Naylor, you think about Hoskinson, you think about obviously one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the league, in Justin Jefferson, and then Addison. It's going to be a tough day for the Detroit Lions secondary and just their defense overall. But this will be one of those games where it's Kansas City versus Rams a few years back when Patrick Mahomes first came into the league, and it's Patrick Mahomes versus Jared Goff, where the score was 54-50. I can see this being that type of game.
Totally agree. We need to take the pulse of Mrs. Fowler here, because she's the biggest Lions fan there is, correct?
Yeah, my mom, 100%.
And is she like, the fact that the defense looks like this right now, like I was watching this broadcast against the Niners, and Troy Aikman sounded like he almost went as far to say, Benny, that he didn't think they were going to win a playoff game because of their defense. He didn't say that, but he kept saying in the beginning of the game, like, this is a real big concern that the Niners are moving the ball like this. And I'm bringing up your mom and her fandom because the Lions, I mean, years and years of angst, right? Mm-hmm. They're finally here. They got to win this one game. If they get the 1 seed, they get the bye, they get some guys healthy. I mean, this has got to be a nerve-wracking time.
Yeah, I would say for all the Detroit Lions fans, it's a nerve-wracking time, but their offense is just doing so well that I think Lions fans aren't necessarily paying attention to it, because if you can score one more point than the other team, then you're better. And their offense has done that. Now, with that being said, I played on some really good offenses, and the year after, when I first got to Denver, like I said, that team was the best offense in NFL history in terms of touchdowns, and they didn't win a Super Bowl. So, lost to Seattle in the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning, some of Peyton Manning's teams have been considered the best offenses ever and haven't won Super Bowls in those years. And even Tom Brady's incredible years, Aaron Rodgers' incredible years, in the playoffs is just totally different.
Really fascinating dynamic with these two teams as well. Something that you brought up, I think, in week 1 of our episode of Talking Ball. You said, like, the Lions have to go into Ben Johnson's office right now and offer him whatever he wants to make sure he doesn't leave, right? Mm-hmm. Because of him and Goff and what they have going. And then you have the Vikings. Sam Darnold and the Vikings both seem to be leaking, hey, this is pretty good. Like, we should kind of stick together. It just feels like two situations where the coach and quarterback are so in sync. And I think it's fair to say if Ben Johnson were to leave, there would be questions about how is Goff going to look next year. And if Darnold, let's say, signed in free agency in New York or, wherever, there would be questions about how is he going to fit without that offensive system. I don't know if you see that the same way as I do now about those players. I mean, they're obviously both really good players, but to me, these are two arguments of it's not criticizing the player to say maybe these guys finally found the right fit and we shouldn't mess with it.
Scheme and fit matter. I think that's one of the most important things. Peyton Manning played in his offense for 18 years. I mean, similar play calls, similar concepts. Brady played in his offense for 20 years. similar plays, similar concepts. Aaron Rodgers, however long he was in Green Bay, similar plays, similar concepts. And then when you see players like Sam Darnold coming to his own and he gets a chance to show his ability, why would you go away from that if you're the player? Why would you go away from that, Minnesota, if you are the team? There's a marriage right here. Let's see if we can continue to have that. Then the same thing goes for Jared Goff, where he played really well under Sean McVay, but they needed somebody to get them over the top. So Jared Goff has shown this before that he can play well with a play caller who knows him and knows his strengths. Ben Johnson knows him and knows his strengths. One of the reasons why I said that about Ben Johnson and that Detroit should offer him a ton of money and to keep him there as long as possible is because it's not only the scheme, but it's his ability to dial up the right play at the right time. Not saying that another coordinator can't come in there and do well and get Jared Goff and those guys in position to be successful, but Ben Johnson, like I said, doesn't see a bad down and distance. He's not calling a draw on 3rd and 17. He's calling a hook and ladder. He had Penei Sewell run a fake reverse motion. Like, he's just being super creative. So that's the element that you'll miss if Ben Johnson leaves. So it's not necessarily just the play calling. It's the belief that people have. Does everybody, if Ben Johnson goes and becomes a head coach somewhere else, do the players come in with the same excitement on a Wednesday and a Thursday when the plays are getting installed? And now you're going to have a new coordinator coming in, and now all those players are going to be comparing his play calling to Ben Johnson's.
And you're saying that as a player, you literally feel empowered on a practice day on that offense, walking in knowing like Ben's going to draw up something, and we're
just know
going
it's going to work.
35.
They don't even think about it anymore. When the players hear the play call, they don't think, oh, is this going to work? They just go out there and run it because they know it's going to work. He has schemed it open, and he has shown that it's going to work in practice throughout the week. So also you'll have to worry about this as well. Ben Johnson leaves. He will be taking Detroit Lions in free agency. It happens with every team where, okay, he goes there and now he's going to take players who are familiar with his system. So the Lions will be losing players. This is one of the things that happens when your team becomes super successful. You lose the coaches and then you will lose key players because Ben Johnson will pay a little bit more money than Detroit will because now he needs these players over here.
Something really stood out to me in the post game. Scott Van Pelt had Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown on the ESPN set after the win over the Niners. And Van Pelt was asking them a lot of different questions about the hook and ladder and different plays and production and why their offense is so productive. And Amon-Ra kept mentioning Ben. He kept mentioning Johnson. It was like Van Pelt wanted to know kind of the X's and O's of the player perspective. And he kept saying, well, Ben's the one who created that, or that goes to Ben during the week. And it was so much more praise and more references to a coordinator than I have ever heard in a single interview. And I think that really spoke to, because these players, especially when they're super productive and, they're confident in themselves, a lot of players feel like, I can't stop. You can't stop me. I felt it was very telling that a guy who has earned the right to have an ego in Amon-Ra St. Brown about his own play, he was constantly deflecting that, like, the OC is the reason why, that really jumped out to me.
Well, Amon-Ra's right in terms, number one, Amon-Ra St. Brown is incredible. Great hands catcher, strong, and one of the heart and souls of that team. But he is right to give that type of praise to Ben Johnson because a lot of the times their players on Detroit were running wide open. Laporta is wide open. The hook and ladder play, I know we keep going back to that. The way they are running the ball with Jamar Gibbs. But you will see if Jared Goff throws 30 passes in a game, 15 of them won't have anybody around them. And that's it. That just goes to the scheme where, they're confusing the defense. I mean, Amon-Ra's touchdown that he scored in the red zone, they busted the coverage. That's because of all of the motion and things that are being done. Amon-Ra caught the ball and was waiting for somebody to hit him. There was no one around him. So comes to the scheme.
No, that's a great point. And they have managed to, with Gibbs and Jamison Williams, and then, Amon-Ra to an extent, but even with Laporte at the tight end position, and Montgomery when he's healthy, but they have an element of speed everywhere. So when you combine scheming guys open in key spots and downs with their speed, like Williams actually said that on the hook and ladder play, he was just trying to get the first down.
Yeah.
And he said he turned the corner and he saw the safety took the wrong angle, and he just kind of flipped the switch and went right down the sideline. Like that's ridiculous.
He's got real speed. He's fast.
Well, Gibbs' touchdown too. I'm not calling him Saquon, but obviously was a very high pick as well. Not as high as Saquon, but one thing Gibbs has that Saquon has, and I'm not saying it's the same level or whatever, but we've seen now in Philadelphia that the Eagles' offensive line, what it has done primarily for Barkley, it has allowed him to cross the line of scrimmage without changing direction on certain key plays. And when Saquon does that and gets his momentum going, he hits another gear and he's gone. That's why you're seeing all these big touchdowns. Gibbs' touchdown the other night against the Niners I think it was the fourth quarter, was a good example of, like, a lot of running backs don't have what Barkley has. Gibbs has that though, where if he gets off the edge and you don't make him change direction, he's going to get faster and no one's going to catch him. Remarkable player. All right. So talking a lot about Ben Johnson there, great convo about really the most exciting up and coming young coach and young offensive mind in the league right now, who has not yet been a head coach. And that brings me to our conversation, Benny, in our preview of Black Monday, as they call it, the day after the end of the NFL regular season, where coaches, general managers get some pink slips. And Benny, right now we have Jets, Saints, and Bears, who all have already fired their coaches. So that's 3 teams who have fired their coaches already. Typically now we annually see about 7 to 10 openings in the NFL, which is sometimes reaches a third of the league. I know that's crazy, but it's just where we are. So I wanted to go through some of the other teams with you, and we could look at some candidate fits, but I want to go team to team, and you tell me whether you feel like the head coach should be fired, and then we'll get into, depending on the team, whether you think the GM should be out too. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Jets, Saints, and Bears all looking for coaches already. The Raiders, to me, look at like the most obvious next coach firing with Antonio Pierce. Do you agree with that one?
Yeah, I think they're going to do a fresh reset. I think he had them playing well at the end of the season last year. That momentum didn't carry over. Fresh reset. They're going to go for a quarterback, and they're going to try to match the quarterback and the head coach.
Right. Sounds right to me. Do you feel like in that decision, and then do you have more confidence in what the Raiders are going to be now that Tom Brady's an owner? Like the decision of who they hire, the quarterback that they draft. Are 100%. You infinitely more confident in them now?
Yeah, because he's going to be in those meetings, and he's going to be able to really bring more structure and more of a process to how the Raiders will be picking, not just always the fast receiver or fast DB. They're always going after the speed because of Al Davis and how he used to draft, but
right.
They're going to be drafting football players now.
And so Tom Telesco in that setup would be Tom Telesco, GM, Tom Brady as an owner, but also influencing, and then the head coach that they hire. Telesco, remember, did draft Justin Herbert for the Chargers, so he has selected a star quarterback more recently. And then I guess it's worth bringing up his name now, the top of the coaching candidacies right now, Mike Vrabel. There's been noise that he would possibly like the New England job if they were to rip it up there after 1 year with Gerard Mayo. But do you like Mike Vrabel for this fit here, like with Brady, Vrabel, former Patriot, or do you feel like going offense would be the right way as they draft a quarterback?
I think going offense would be the right way. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after like a Ben Johnson as well.
Yeah, right. No, that makes sense. All right. So that would be 4 openings then. The Giants, number 5. I do feel like Daboll is going to get fired. We'll see. There's a lot of noise and propaganda about different things they should do, might do, will do. Giants just won a game against the Indianapolis Colts. Certainly going to walk into John Mara and Steve Tisch's office and say that he feels like he deserves to continue. Benny, what do you think? Fired here or stays?
No, I think he gets fired, and I don't know what would make him think that he should stay. Just because they beat the Colts doesn't mean anything. They haven't done well. He hasn't done well there. Besides they did have the playoff year, but he hasn't been able to recreate that magic. They've lost a ton of veterans. People don't want to come play there. Joe Sheen, I think, has to go as well, just based off of the decisions that he made with Saquon and not re-signing him. Cutting Daniel in the middle of the year shows that you just gave up on the entire team. Hard Knocks wasn't a good look. Doesn't seem like he's competent in terms of, what he's doing. What I will give Sheen credit for, or whoever made this decision, is that whoever drafted Malik Neighbors, damn, what an incredible player. And what he is doing as a rookie, I will give them credit for that. They got a star in him. And, shout out to him for the rookie season that he's having, and that, hopefully he finishes up strong. But whoever made that pick, job well done. But other than that, haven't done a good job. So I think they clean house and they draft a quarterback, or you go sign one in free agency, and then you pair them up with the right coach.
Interesting point you bring up about Neighbors. They were both involved in that pick, Shane and Dable. You could flip it and say, well, they didn't draft Bo Nix or Michael Penix there, or JJ McCarthy, depending on what he becomes, and look at what their quarterback situation is. But you're absolutely right. The kid's super talented. He's only 21 years old, which is something I constantly remind myself because of his production, his speed, his physical strength.
Yeah.
So as he learns the game, he's only going to get better for sure. But I agree with you. I don't think that should save jobs. I think it's more just a positive of like, hey, we have a building block here for whoever comes in next. There is a chance, though, that Shane is safe and Dable gets fired because of that pick and things like that. And then they probably end up marrying him with a new coach, and probably gets messy and they probably screw it up, is my vantage point. But I agree with you. Both should get fired, and something in my gut tells me they will. So that would be 5. Number 6 is the Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson. Maybe should have put this ahead of even the Giants. I feel like this is an obvious one that's coming. You agree that that's going to happen there?
Yeah, Doug hasn't done as well as he should have there. I know he's had some injuries with Trevor, but Trevor took a step and then took another step back. So
yeah,
doesn't just seem like, things are going well there. And I don't know, it's hard to do well in Jacksonville. So yeah, it's just a tough situation, and they need to figure out, is Trevor the guy going forward? And I think they just need a clean slate there.
Agree. All right, so that's 6. All right, now I have a group of 5 teams, Benny, that I feel like 1 to 2, possibly 3, depending on a surprise, right? This is where it could go either way. Factors that people aren't aware of outside of the building could lead to a firing. All right. New England Patriots. Now, it would look horrendous for them after moving on from Belichick and essentially grooming Mayo for this job to fire him after one season, because it was really their entire plan. But Benny, it doesn't look like, it doesn't sound like he's ready for this job. Do you think that they would fire him after 1 year, or even without knowing necessarily what they're going to do? Does this look like the kind of situation where it's like, we've already seen he can't get it done, it's time for a new guy? Or do you think just let it ride another year?
I think they'll let it ride another year, just based off of Kraft and him having a love for Gerard Mayo, and then, knowing that he was going to hire him right away. If Belichick, him and Belichick didn't work out. So I see at least 1 more year for Gerard Mayo.
Okay. I think I'm leaning your way just for optics reasons from ownership, but I do think it will be the wrong decision. Cleveland Browns. So Kevin Stefanski is a guy who well respected in the league, good play caller, even though he gave it up this year. Of course, the Deshaun Watson decision was an absolute disaster organizationally. Entering this year, Benny, this was actually a job, Stefanski's job, that was being most talked about among like a top 3 or 4 of obvious hot seat. and then kind of what they were able to generate midseason with Jameis coming in. There was some momentum there. They looked like a real NFL team once Watson went out for a time. So it wasn't talked about as much. But I do feel like there's a possibility here, given how the Browns have floundered here down the stretch. What do you think? I don't know for sure, but I think it could happen here.
I think it could happen too. I don't think that Stefanski has done a job where you're just like, all right, like we're definitely bringing him back. What has he really shown you? He didn't really get it done with Baker. Baker's out of there. Baker's now thriving in Tampa. Deshaun Watson, the contract was really bad there. Jameis showed highlights on a couple of games, but at the end of the day, he's, still turned the ball over. Do players still want to play there? Myles Garrett's talking about leaving. You think about somebody like him, you lose a cornerstone piece because he wants to go to a contender now. You're in a tough division, a really tough division. So I think they clean house too and try to reset and go forward. I don't know what could be done there in terms of, coaching hires, but I don't see why they would just stick with Stefanski, or maybe that is why they stick with Stefanski, is because who else is better out there? So interesting situation. Defense has shown, promise over the last couple of years, but it's not getting them over the hump.
That's a funny point you bring up. I think a poignant point about what candidates are out there if you're moving on from your guy. That, that's still, you don't want to make the decision based on, like, if what you have is not right, you do want to make a change, but you also want to make an upgrade. If you don't have a plan for doing that, it makes it more difficult. Also, I would say this, like, if the Giants fire Brian Daboll, I don't think there's teams lined up to hire him as a head coach. If the Browns fire Kevin Stefanski and I'm the Giants and I just fire Brian Daboll, I'm interviewing Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's a good maybe barometer of, like, should we? Like, to me, as we were talking about that, I'm thinking, man, between the Jets, Saints, Giants, Bears, Raiders, like, Stefanski would interview with all of them. They would all be interested in that. I do think, though, there's nothing I know definitively yet. It wouldn't surprise me if they cleaned house still, because that is extremely fickle and unreliable ownership. And also, even though everybody knows ownership drove the Deshaun Watson decision, if you do try to move on optically and kind of change the way people are thinking about your team, you're not firing yourself as Jimmy Haslam. So I think let's put them on the list as the 7th opening, but obviously possibly that doesn't happen. Okay. Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, basically a playoff team. And everyone said, wow, look at how hard they're playing. And McCarthy, look at what he's getting out of this team without some players. They shut CeeDee Lamb down. He gets shoulder surgery, and they come out and lay a colossal egg against the Eagles. Where do you fall on Mike McCarthy? Final year of his contract. Is Dallas going to rip it up and try to start fresh and go get a Ben Johnson, or is McCarthy going to end up staying?
I think they try to go get a Ben Johnson. I mean, you need somebody who can command respect offensively, defensively, on special teams. You need somebody who's better in late game situations. You need somebody who's better at managing the clock. And I think, you saw what McCarthy could do. He'd had some success in terms of the regular season in Dallas, but couldn't get it done. So I think Dallas, they move on and they try to find somebody else.
I agree. So that's 8. 2 more in the category of obviously something wrong with the program, but early in tenures. So will they stick it out? One is the Indianapolis Colts. And Benny, I was there in person last week. At least I got paid to watch it, but what an abomination of a team they are right now. And personnel wise, but also, Benny, I haven't seen a team try less than they did on defense in that game. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. And also, and Pat McAfee's been really vocal about this as a former Colt who cares about the team. They've been like players missing meetings, guys late for treatment. They just don't sound like there's any accountability in the building. Meanwhile, Raheem Morris in Atlanta, I know you've been telling me all year, like, this team doesn't even matter. Why are you asking me about it? But his management of the timeouts at the end of the halves in these games, like I don't think Morris, with all respect, I don't think he knows what he's doing as a head coach. And between Steichen not having a firm grasp around his team and Morris with a team that we know that owner, Arthur Blank, he always thinks he has a Super Bowl team, whether or not he does. Rich McKay has all the power. Do you feel like Indy and or Atlanta could make changes very early in those coaching tenures, or do you feel like they'll stick it out?
Indy, I think they could change, especially with Pat McAfee coming out there, or maybe they'll keep their coach just to stick it to Pat. But I think when it comes to ownership, it's always from the top down. And, if players are missing meetings or things aren't great with the culture, that starts at the top. That starts with the owner, that starts with the GM, and then that trickles down to the head coach. So that's a cultural problem. And I think, it's super embarrassing for Indy to go lose to the Giants, who are trying to, they're not necessarily trying to win because of draft position, but, that's just a bad loss. And then you have former players that don't, they're not even supportive of the Colts. And, they played there for a long time, and Pat and Peyton. So that's something, that's very worrisome if you are a Colts fan. And then when it comes to the Falcons, I don't know. That's a tough one, just because, they're in a position to win the division. They went to Penix. But when you look at the GM, you paid Kirk, you drafted Penix, there's just a lot that's going on there.
Yeah.
And, do you want to just do that to a young quarterback? In his first year, you just drafted him. He makes the decision to put Penix in, and, Penix is looking okay. So I don't know. It's a tough decision. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I had to pick, I would say that he stays for at least one more year.
I think you're probably right there. I'll put the Colts down as number 9. And then 2 that I came up with, I don't think there's any others I'm missing here that could come out of nowhere, but 2 teams that at least there's a conversation to be had, even if we don't feel it's going to happen. But Miami and Cincinnati are teams with Mike McDaniel, Zach Taylor. They're just teams with high expectations that fell way short.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of reasons why every team's different, but just curious from your vantage point, if you feel like either of those head coaches could, obviously it matters who the owners are too. That's part of the reason. But do you feel like either of those head coaches have reason to be worried that their teams who were projected at a certain level with talent that people talk about on their rosters and quarterbacks, et cetera, have fallen short?
I would say Zach Taylor is safe, and I would say he's safe because of the relationship that he has with Joe Burrow. And you can't just go find those types of relationships. Him and Joe have a level of camaraderie, and they have a relationship to where you can see, at least from the Hard Knocks episodes or clips that I've seen, that, they are bouncing a lot off of each other, and they have that relationship. They have that rapport. So I would say Zach is safe if they're smart, but I'm also, a little bit concerned as an owner why we keep getting off to these slow starts. So we need to figure out the defensive situation and get better players in here, because we could. I mean, the way our quarterback is playing, we should be top seed in the AFC. And then the other team was who?
The other team was the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel.
Man, when Mike has a healthy quarterback, and they do some incredible things, but right now they're not healthy. I think the Tua contract was a mistake.
No doubt.
So I think that was the biggest mistake, is paying him, and then now you have to pay him. But I draft a quarterback this year if I'm Miami, or I go to find a quarterback in free agency that can back Tua up, because this happens too much. I don't actually think Tua cares all that much about actually playing football.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's good, and I think, he loves the game, but I just don't see it from him as one of those top tier perennial quarterbacks in terms of the care, the want to. I just don't see it.
So that's obviously, you make a statement like that as a former player. That's something that you've thought through, you take very seriously. There's nothing worse you can say about a player, right? What do you see in him that makes you say, like, you just don't think he cares as much about football?
maybe I take that back. I mean, because he is playing through the concussions, or so I know he cares and he wants to be out there, but I don't know what injury he has right now. But I just don't see the level of intensity that I would want to see out of a quarterback that I'm paying 45, $50 million a year. You
No,
know,
I wasn't questioning your statement. It's just, yeah, it's a very interesting one to make. I mean, I think one thing, I don't know if this is fair or not, but I always feel like when a guy's a professional athlete and he walks up there at the podium and he's doughy, it kind of makes you think like, I see your other teammates and how they look. How come you don't look the same? Like, didn't you work out in the off season, right? Aren't you
Mhm.
taking care of your body at a maximum level? Like those things are things that reporters or fans or real people look at and they say, what's going on here? Is there a different level of commitment? I can't agree with you more though about paying him being a mistake. In fact, thinking about McDaniel and where they go, it just feels like it's impossible for me to get the Kansas City playoff game last year out of my head. And, I think everybody knew going into that game the way it was going to look. Usually these NFL games they're tight, they're close, and they're unpredictable. That's part of what makes the league what it is, why it's so popular, right? It's like any given Sunday. Everyone knew going into a cold weather game in Kansas City that Tua and the Dolphins were going to lay an egg.
Hmm.
And I just don't feel like they can do any more with what they have as long as he's the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm there. But yeah, I think what you're saying is McDaniel stays. So in our exercise here, we speculated that up to 9 could have openings: Jets, Saints, Bears, Colts, Raiders, Giants, Jaguars, Browns, and Cowboys. Benny,
Maybe Arizona.
really?
Mhm.
What? He's only been there 2 years, right?
Yep. But
Arizona.
yeah,
Any,
why not?
anything? Any reason you say other than just it's just an uninspiring product and yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
just super up and down team. And can they find something better or someone better?
Arizona rounds it out to double digits. Last question, Benny. You've given us a ton of time today. Really appreciate it as always. As we sit here now, we'll talk about this more, but because it's not decided on Monday or Tuesday, right? This team's going to be going into the playoffs, but at this moment, with that group of teams plus staying at the Lions, where would you think right now Ben Johnson ends up in that group? So again, it's Jets, Saints, Bears, Raiders, Giants, Jaguars, Browns, Cowboys, Colts, and Cardinals. Or forget predicting it. Where could you envision being the best fit that he would capitalize on? Again, it could be staying in Detroit.
I mean, staying in Detroit would be the best fit just because you have the players, you have the structure there. But I'd be hard pressed if Tom Brady were to have a one-on-one meeting with Ben Johnson that he couldn't convince him to come join the Raiders with cap space that they'll have, players that he'll get to choose, and working alongside of Brady. So,
Ben Johnson, Raiders head coach, man, that would make the Vegas Strip light up like never before. This has been Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, first edition of 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. And of course, couldn't do it without our Super Bowl 50 champion, former NFL wide receiver, Benny Fowler. Beans, thanks so much for your time, as always.
appreciate you, Pat.
That was First Down with Benny Fowler here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. Happy 2025. Happy New Year. Happy Week 18 as we roll into Black Monday and the playoff hunt. Reminder, we are brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors this football season. We will keep going throughout the postseason and into the Super Bowl. Use the promo code PATSPICKS, PATSPICKS, at the link in my social media profiles everywhere and get a 50% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. Brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink here as well on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Use Boom Chaga. It can lower your cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta glucan and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Place your first order. Use that discount code TalkingBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And Estate 98 Coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, all natural. Go to estate98.com/talkingball to get an 80% off discount exclusively off your first order. It's great for making a quick hot or iced coffee, skipping the lines out there in those coffee stores all across your area as you're on your way to work. Make a quick 10-second cup of Estate 98 and you're off. Or if you like espresso martinis, a trendy drink nowadays around the holidays and the new year, it's a great mixer for espresso martini. So again, my bookie, Boom Chaga, Estate 98 Coffee. Please support our sponsors. We are thankful to them for supporting us. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. See you next time.